At the age of 18, my entire family was imprisoned and a century-old family collapsed in an instant. I tightly shut my mouth, refusing to drink the miscarriage medicine. Yet, he forcefully unhinged my jaw, and the mater was spared. My child, already formed, turned into a pool of blood and drained away alone with my life. And he, without a second thought, entered the palace, kneeling before the throne for 3 days and nights, requesting the emperor's permission to make my younger half-sister his legitimate wife. Blood spread beneath my feet, growing ever wider. I watched as the child I had waited for 8 months to welcome was cruelly ripped from my body, never even seeing this world. But I was pinned down by the maids, unable to do anything. I hated myself. How could I have been so blind? I mistook a wolf for a husband. A venomous snake for a sister. It was my foolishness that led to the exile of my entire family and the death of my grandmother. If only I could lead this life again. How I wish I could. This life I have lived is so suffocating, a lie. All because of the second young miss forcing our young lady to go to the lake. That's why she still hasn't woken up. In my dazed state, I thought I heard NY's chattering voice. Nancy was my maid, a simpleton who had served me since childhood. Though clumsy, she always put me first. In the second year, after marrying into the Lucas family, I still hadn't born a child. Though Lucas treated me well, my self-esteem plummeted. I foolishly agreed to let my younger half-sister enter the household. 7 months later, my half-sister gave birth to a son, and soon after, she took over the household affairs. The opportunistic servants, eager to please the new mistress, turned their backs on me. Lucas was busy during that time, and I hadn't even shared the joy of my pregnancy with him before he had to rush to Ningqiang. I remember that day, biting cold. The low-quality charcoal smoke made me cough incessantly. Man, looking heartbroken, turned quietly and left, never to return. It was later I found out that she had been stopped by my half-sister and accused of stealing silver charcoal. She was brutally beaten to death. Her body left at a nameless burial ground. Such a foolish girl. What could be more precious than one's own life? The young lady was frightened, but after a period of rest, she'll recover. There's no need for the madam to worry. Thank goodness Sophia is fine. Otherwise, I'd make sure Lucas's family pays. My mother's suppressed voice reached my ears, accompanied by my father's appeasing tones. Father, mother, how I miss you. My body felt heavy, as if I was sinking into a deep abyss, constantly being pulled. I summoned all my strength to open my eyes and saw my mother's concerned face. When she saw me wake up, she hugged me tightly, her relief evident. Sophia, you're awake. I heard you fainted by the lake. It really scared me, she whispered. Her embrace, a silent reassurance that this was not a dream. I instinctively curled up in her arms. How warm it was. Thank goodness. Thank goodness it's not too late. How wonderful it was a rebirth. I was reborn on the day Lucas came to propose. When I was 16. That day, I accidentally bumped into my half-sister, who fell into the lake. I rushed to help, but Lucas, coming to save her, collided with me. My head hit a stone, and I lost consciousness. Before I lost my senses, all I could see was him hurriedly carrying my half-sister away. When I arrived at the hall, my half-sister, teary-eyed, knelt and swayed on the verge of collapse. Only when she heard my footsteps did she dare to lift her head, crying. Big sister Amasai, it was my fault I fell into the lake. The young master was only trying to help. Please don't blame him. Lucas looked at her with deep concern. If looks could kill, I would have been pierced by thousands of daggers by now. Grandmother, sitting in her seat, looked annoyed, but was still startled upon seeing me. She forced a smile and waved me over to her side. Grandmother, I'm fine. Don't worry. I obediently walked up and nestled in her arms. The thought of this dear old woman who had always held me close to her heart, only to die in such a tragic way, made tears uncontrollably fall. My dear, why are you crying? Don't worry. Grandmother will handle everything for you. Stop crying. My heart can't bear it. The usually cold and indifferent grandmother looked at me, panic flooding her face. She held me tightly, patting me, calling me her heart and soul. The more I cried, the more she seemed to turn and chase everyone out of the room to keep them from seeing my tears. My half-sister, watching the preferential treatment I was receiving, looked at Lucas with a pitiful expression, then quietly shed more tears, pretending to be fragile and helpless. Oh, how pitiable this delicate little flower looks. Unfortunately, having fulfilled her role, Lucas was the only one who seemed to care. Sure enough, his brows furrowed as he coldly said to me, "A man marries a woman of virtue. But one who treats her sister with such malice, Lucas would never marry her." "How dare you?" Father overheard this and stormed in, full of rage. He bowed to grandmother, then turned to scold my weeping half-sister. "It's all your fault. What business did you have taking your elder sister to the lake, and now you're crying after falling in? How shameless." My half-sister, trembling in fear, curled up and silently let the tears fall. Lucas was in disbelief. He knew that William loved his daughters dearly, but he had never imagined the other. He looked at the fragile half-sister, his heart aching for her, unable to understand why she had to endure this. "Lord William, I saw it with my own eyes. Sophia pushed her sister on such a cold day. You enough. Has your mouth grown too big?" Father impatiently interrupted Lucas, then coldly added, "I still haven't held you accountable for knocking Sophia unconscious." Grandmother held me tightly and shot Lucas a fierce glare. Don't even think about accusing me of pushing Evelyn. Even if I did, no one in this family would dare say a word against it. I had once been the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's residence, born to power, raised in privilege, cherished by both my parents, and adored as the apple of my grandmother's eye. My name is Sophia, spoiled, protected, and depended on by all. From childhood to adulthood, I had never suffered the slightest grievance. Even the third prince, the emperor's most favored son, was someone I could beat when he irritated me. My imperial uncle would only sigh in distress and say, "Ming girl, this brat can take a beating. Come, let uncle see your hands do burs yourself." And then the rewards would flow endlessly into her residence like running water. In this world, everyone knew how precious the eldest young lady of the William family was, more precious than golden branches and jade leaves. Lucas knew this too, but he simply assumed I loved him to the bone, that I would never bear to break off our engagement. Only with that confidence did he dare utter such righteous-sounding nonsense. He only wanted to humiliate me, cement my reputation as a vicious, domineering fiend. Oh, the world would think he was marrying me under pressure, paving the way for his future betrayals. But Lucas, in this lifetime, I won't let you eat soft rice off me ever again. Who can't pretend to be a delicate white lotus? I blinked, gathering a shimmer of tears in my eyes, with how red they already were from crying. Grandmother's heart taped all the more. I looked painfully between the two of them, then slowly slipped out of grandmother's embrace and knelt in the hall. The sasha Lucas carries. It was embroidered by my second sister, wasn't it? No wonder he cherishes it so dearly, wearing it every day. Only today did I learn that I have been the one cruelly separating true lovers. In that case, I asked grandmother and father to witness, let this engagement be dissolved. I nearly couldn't hold back my smile. I pinched my thigh hard, forcing fresh tears to fall. Father hurried to help me up in distress, and I allowed myself to wobble pitifully. My knees were still useful. After all, grandmother was delighted. My concubine-born sister was secretly delighted. Only Lucas was stunned. Impatience flickered in his eyes, though he forced his tone softer. "Sophia, if you apologize to your sister, then this engagement. May Lucas and my dear sister enjoy a harmonious marriage and a lifetime of bliss." I cut him off cleanly. I genuinely didn't want to hear a single extra word. "You, Lucas," glared at me, trembling with rage. "Lucas," grandmother said coldly, "the William family is not one you can insult at will. It was you who climbed above your station to begin with. This engagement was never suitable. Grandmother was the only daughter of a general's estate. She had always disdained my concubine-born sister's fake lotus act. Let alone now when the girl had the audacity to exchange meaningful glances right in front of her. Grandmother directly took my marital horoscope card and replaced it with Evelyn's, shoving it into Lucas's hands. Everyone in the residence saw you and Evelyn entangled in intimate contact. Evelyn's status matches yours just fine. We agreed to this marriage. Today was originally the day Lucas came to finalize my engagement. The engagement was indeed settled, just with a different bride. Lucas, Aren't you thrilled? In this lifetime, you don't even have to kneel outside for 3 days and nights to win what you wanted. Only 2, with your bride being the unfavored Evelyn. I wonder how you plan to climb upward now. Evelyn's birth mother had once been a second-rate maid-serving grandmother while my mother was pregnant. That made her seize the moment when father was drunk and conceive a child for 3 months. No one, not even father, knew until she coincidentally fainted before mother. She knelt before my mother, crying about her helplessness, crying about the innocence of her unborn child. My mother had always been pampered, innocent, and tender-hearted after marrying father. They were inseparable, with an open-minded mother-in-law. She had never encountered anything so ugly. When grandmother learned of it, she was furious. She wanted the child gone. Mother stopped her, unable to bear ending a life. She promised that once the child was born, the maid would be elevated to a concubine. But the maid was self-fated. She died of blood loss after giving birth to Evelyn because Evelyn was close to my age. I liked playing with her, and grandmother and father gradually softened toward her too. Once had infiltrated after seeing a servant mistreat her. I even begged mother to register her under her name. I only gave up after being harshly punished. Evelyn, so everything you have today exists because of me. During the following days, my entire family took turns tiptoeing around, afraid I might collapse in heartbreak. After I assured them for the 100th time that I truly didn't care about Lucas anymore, they finally relaxed. They never liked Lucas to begin with. It was only because I liked him that they reluctantly agreed. Even if outsiders accused us of abusing our power, but in the end, Lucas righteously denounced us, accusing my family of treason. How could I ever forget? Even before His Majesty became emperor, father had been his sworn brother in arms. On the path to the throne, father shielded him from countless blades and arrows, earning himself a chronic cart ailment. When His Majesty first ascended the throne, the border was unstable, the people anxious. No one in court was willing to go. Father volunteered to guard the frontier, staying for 20 years, bringing true peace and prosperity to the nation. He became the powerful Duke William, second only to the emperor. But the heart of one who sits high is always suspicious. Grant power, then fear its eventual bite. Father, carefree as he was, never realized that the man who once called him brother had already changed. In my past life, with Lucas's help, His Majesty was shocked to discover that father had a secret private army intent on rebellion. The so-called private army was nothing but a pretext. They were His Majesty's own shadow guardsmen who could never be publicly acknowledged, who answered only to him. They were meant to be his blade. Instead, they became the dagger plunged into the heart of the William family, the final straw that crushed us. How laughable. No wonder father said nothing in his imprisonment, not a single defense. He must have been utterly heartbroken. After some discreet potting from me this time, father finally submitted a memorial. Soon after, His Majesty summoned father and me. Present were Lucas and his father. The emperor still hadn't given up. Of course, marrying the flourishing William family to the hollow, insignificant Lucas family gave him perfect leverage. Otherwise, where would Lucas get the courage to act so brazenly? Sophia tells us the boy from the Lucas family bullied you. Come, let us venture anger. His Majesty's face was kind, but beneath that sharp gaze simmered killing intent. I subtly studied my breath, then spoke with a choked voice. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Marriage should never be forced. I recounted the events of that day briefly and sighed. It was my arrogance. Had I known my sister and the young lord had long held mutual affection, I would have dissolved the engagement sooner. The crowd's faces twisted in fascinating colors. Either Lucas's father cast him a fierce glare. Lucas bowed his noble head, guilt or regret clouding his expression. Bad news always spreads fastest. The story of Lucas shoving me aside, causing me to hit my head on a stone while he rushed to save my concubine-born sister had long been widely circulated. An unwed man and his being Kay's younger sister. Enough spit from the public could drown them both. And I would make sure that from their reputation down to their bones. They rotted in stench for the rest of their lives. His Majesty erupted in fury, rebuking Lucas on the spot. Terrified, Lucas and his father dropped to their knees, knocking their heads against the floor again and again. My father looked down at the pair with open disdain. Thank heaven Sophia had not married into such a spineless family. With a respectful bow, he presented the memorial in his hands to the chief eunuch. Your Majesty, this minister has spent decades on the battlefield, and this daughter is my most precious treasure. I could not bear to see the heir treat her with such cruelty. This is my second daughter's birth record. I beseech Her Majesty to make the decision. The Emperor opened the memorial. At first, only glancing at it, but his gaze abruptly froze. He stared at it for a long moment, then lifted his eyes toward my father, eyes full of pleading. My father had followed the Emperor since childhood, fighting for him across the realm, sharing hunger and hardship, blocking countless blades and arrows meant for him. But now his back was so bent he could no longer even lift a sword. For what lay on the memorial was not a birth record. It was his military command token and the seal that controlled the shadow guards. A flicker of old memories and helpless sorrow crossed the Emperor's eyes. My father had no sons. After his death, there would be no threat to the throne. With a long sigh, the Emperor said, "My loyal friend, as you wish. Sophia shall be titled Princess Fuan, honored with the name An. From this day forth, she shall be free to choose her own marriage. As for Lucas and Evelyn, grant marriage. Choose an auspicious date." The hall fell into stunned silence and the imperial title of the nation's founding. Even among princesses, who were granted such a name, let alone a mere commandery princess. In other words, even before the Empress herself, I no longer needed to kneel. My father had traded his military power and the shadow birds to elevate me beyond all reach. From that day on, suitors lined up outside our gates. Lucas and Evelyn were married quietly. No grand procession, no congratulations. No one wished to be associated with them, aside from the red bridal sedan chair. Evelyn's wedding was worse than the ceremony for a concubine in a noble household. The next time I saw Evelyn was at the eldest princess's flower viewing banquet. Her belly had already begun to swell. She had caked on powder, yet still looked haggard and drained. The ladies refused to speak to her. She sat in a corner the whole time, glancing at me with visible anxiety. I supposed I should create an opportunity for her. After quietly seeking permission from Mother, I rose and headed outside. From the corner of my eye, I caught a flash of emerald green Evelyn's skirt. As expected, she was following me at abandon the garden path. I stopped and turned, mockery curling at my lips. "Well, what do you want?" She glanced around nervously before abruptly dropping to her knees. "Elder sister, I know I was wrong. Lucas, he's truly a monster." She paused, watching my reaction. I showed no interest. Evelyn ungritted her teeth, rolled up her sleeve, and revealed a forearm covered in bruises. Model blue and purple, dotted with tiny needle marks. "He resents me for ruining your engagement. From the day I married, I've lived in hell." She wept into her hands. The gold hairpin in her bun shaking wildly. She looked pitiful indeed. But what did that have to do with me? I had no desire to indulge her performance and turned to leave. She grabbed my leg desperately for the sake of the thing in her belly. I refrained from kicking her away. "Sister, please, please save me. Sister, go see him. If you don't do, he'll kill me. I'm begging you. We grew up together. We are real sisters." "All right." My answer was crisp. If I didn't go, wouldn't that ruin the little scene they prepared today? I was merely curious who would be the unfortunate one by the end of it. Miss Nancy looked at me anxiously, wanting to say something, but under my gaze. She swallowed her words. Evelyn, who had been sobbing uncontrollably just moments ago, instantly stopped crying. She lifted her head, disbelief flickering into a flash of triumph and malice, supporting her belly. She led the way along the path. She made every excuse to send away the maids at my side. I cooperated, dismissing them one by one. Any farther, and it will look improper. I draw lousily. It's so secluded if anything happened. I wouldn't be able to explain myself. Evelyn flinched under my mocking gaze. Truly impressive. They had even found such a desolate corner within the princess's residence. Sure enough, convinced I had no way to escape. She stopped pretending. A vicious smile curved her lips. Sister, after today, we'll be the same. My vision went black. When I woke, I was already lying in a bed. Lucas's enlarged face hovered over mine. His fingers traced my features. The coldness of his touch making me turn away instinctively. He studied me with a gaze filled with tangled emotions, something like the joy of regaining what was lost mixed with resentment. I flexed my fingers slightly. His Evelyn had indeed gone all out. My limbs were still numb. Judging from the scene, I could guess their intention to let Lucas ruin my purity. And if I guess correctly, the entire household would coincidentally arrive soon after. So Klitsch, you think I'm going to do something to you? Lucas seemed to read my thoughts. Truth is, before you came, I intended to. If Princess Fu and lost her virtue, she'd have no choice but to marry me, and then the William family would fall into my hands. But you were mine to begin with, weren't you, my wife? His eyes held bottomless meaning, like a whirlpool trying to pull me in. Though it was midsummer, a cold shiver spread through my bones. Look, I say, had he been reborn as well? No, he wasn't certain. He was testing me. Feeling sensation returning to my limbs. I clapped my hands lightly. The shadow guards my father assigned to me subdued Lucas instantly, pinning him to the floor. Lucas had infos and Sazhan. Your wife is still waiting at the door. He didn't resist. Instead, he laughed foolishly, staring up at me with a look so doting one would think I was a spoiled little girl throwing a tantrum. Tie him up. Throw him on the bed. I ordered quietly. Lucas, isn't this what you wanted to destroy me? I tilted my head, smiling coldly. Let me show you what it means to lose both your wife and your army. With all my strength, I slapped him across the face. Then I had the shadow guards for a pill down his throat. Lucas's lip was bleeding, but he didn't seem to care. He kept staring at me, his gaze making me uneasy. At that moment, Nancy had already brought in Evelyn, who appeared dazed. Her face flushed. I signaled for the shadow guards to toss her onto the bed. Evelyn, responding to the warmth, began to fumble towards Lucas. I checked the time. It was about right. I turned and walked out the door, carefully closing it behind me. As soon as I stepped outside, my legs gave way beneath me, and I nearly collapsed. Thankfully, fully, Nancy was there to steady me. Sophia, I knew you had come back. Lucas's voice rang out just before I left, and I nearly lost my composure. Lucas's schemes were deep, and in my past life, he outlived me. I dared not dwell on the thought. The noises from the room grew louder with shouting and frantic footsteps approaching. I sidestepped, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the show to begin. I see a people surrounded the Grand Princess. And judging by the commotion, it seemed everyone in the residence had gathered. Evelyn, did you really think I'd give you any mercy? If I were the one in that room, even with my esteemed status, I wouldn't survive. Creak. The old wooden door was easily pushed open. You have gone too far. The Grand Princess's furious voice rang out. Pull them apart. I straightened my sleeves. Slowly stepping through the crowd towards the back. The moment my mother saw me, her anxious heart seemed to finally settle. Since I had left the room midway, there was much gossip and whispering. My mother showed no signs of distress on her face. She appeared calm, but inside her heart was in turmoil. She feared that I might have been manipulated. Mother, what happened? I asked, but she was too late to stop me. When I saw the scene inside, I was stunned. Evelyn lay on the bed like a rag, her body completely exposed. A man was on top of her, and a servant struggled for a long time before pulling them apart. The women in the room screamed, quickly covering their eyes. It was too shocking. My mother hugged me tightly, afraid that my eyes might be tainted by the sight. The man snapped out of the stupor and realizing the situation, trembled in fear, begging on the floor. It was her who seduced me. It's not my fault. He repeatedly countered, desperately hoping to save himself. The man before me was a stranger, not Lucas. Where was Lucas? Where had he gone? A bad thought crossed my mind. Evelyn was bleeding steadily, her face deathly pale. Despite the ruckus, she showed no signs of life, which seemed abnormal. The servant trembled as he checked her breath and then shouted in panic. She's dead. The women in the room, mostly relatives, already knew what had happened. What a pity. The child had already taken form this month. Someone muttered these words and the room erupted in a frenzy. Everyone was whispering in scandal, eager to rush home and spread the news. The Grand Princess's sharp gaze swept over the crowd. Silence. All of you, she commanded, for her house had just witnessed a death, and she too would face the consequences. My mother's face was full of sorrow as she anxiously looked at me. There were also some women jealous of me who looked at me with a smug expression. I knew Evelyn's situation had RU and the William family's reputation. My name would certainly be affected and no one would seek my hand in marriage anytime soon, but I didn't care. Marriage was not the only path for a woman. Madam Mad, what's happened? Lucas suddenly staggered into the room. His eyes were red and his troubling hands reached for Evelyn's breath, but tears fell down his face in despair. He gently took off his outer coat and placed it over Evelyn, lifting her as though she were a fragile treasure. With heavy steps, he made for the door. Many of the women were moved by Lucas's display of deep emotion. I, however, dug my nails into my palm, forcing myself to show no reaction as a coldness spread within me. When Lucas passed by me, holding Evelyn, he whispered in a tone that only I could hear. One corpse, 2 lives. I've returned her to you. Are you happy now? Without hesitation, he had killed his own child. Using the most brutal way to send me this message, he knew. He knew I had been reborn. Evelyn was dead, and the child inside her was a male fetus well-formed. The William family was in the eye of the storm. Every time my father returned from court, he looked filled with shame. My mother also avoided going out, frustrated by the stares and whispers. When grandmother found out, she was so angry that she nearly had a stroke. She muttered incessantly, cursing the calamity. Then let out a low sigh. When she was lucid, she would sigh, "My poor Sophia, what do I do?" As for me, I remained a revered and untouchable Duchess of Fuan. Though they refrained from speaking out directly due to my status. Whenever there were flower viewing parties or poetry readings, I would still receive invitations. But whenever I appeared, everyone kept their distance as though I carried a plague. The suitors who once came to seek my hand were now the sons of noble families. Today fulfilled my incession. They were merely the illegitimate sons of fallen houses, hoping to use me to climb the social ladder. As for Lucas, his actions last time earned him a wave of admiration. Everyone spoke of his loyalty and righteousness, praising him as a rare gem in the world, and having done many good deeds. Lucas began to gain more favor in the court, eventually being bestowed the title of Duke of Dingan. Also rising alongside him was the first prince, the usually overlooked eldest son of the concubine, and had suddenly become a top candidate for crown prince. The winds of the court had shifted. Like in my past life, I knew that Lucas had secretly allied himself with the first prince. Using my fork and wall from my rebirth, he helped remove many obstacles for the prince. One day, as usual, father went to court. But it was days before he returned. When he did, he looked years older, his body frail. He sighed heavily and patted my head, saying, "My Sophia deserves the best in the world. If there's something you don't want to do, you don't have to." It turned out that Lucas had kneeled for 3 days and nights before the emperor, begging for a royal marriage. How laughable. In my past life, he did it for Evelyn. And now he was doing it to marry me. Lucas had recently achieved great feats. Combined with the first prince's backing, the emperor's thoughts had begun to shift, but remembering his earlier promise to me of freedom in marriage. The emperor refused Lucas's request on the surface. Soon after, he summoned father and subtly hinted, hoping father would voluntarily marry me to Lucas. Father refused. The emperor had father confined in the palace for several days to think things over. Afterward, father, his old feelings for the emperor shattered, voluntarily requested an audience with determined words. He expressed his desire to step down from court. The emperor tried to persuade him a few times, but eventually he handed over all of William's power, bestowing rare treasures on father as a reward. The matter of marriage was never mentioned again. Once father had free time, he started walking the dogs, feeding the birds, and occasionally going on outings with mother. For months, he didn't come home. The emperor's vigilance toward the William estate gradually eased, and the spies stationed at our gates were finally withdrawn. Everyone knew that the once powerful William family was now nothing but a hollow shell, while the once destitute Lucas clan had risen to its peak. But I knew the truth. The William estate was safe. The women of the capital regarded me with jealousy and spite. Lucas sent gifts to the William family every few days, broadcasting to the world that I was already his possession. I hollowed out William estate and the domineering Mahi Den and who would still dare come propose marriage. Sophia once the crown prince takes the throne. You'll be the future Lady Marquis. Sophia, those who stand in our way are gone. Let's live well together. All right. We'll have so many children this lifetime. I will treat you well. Lucas seized every opportunity to buzz in my ear like a relentless fly. Absolutely insufferable. He was so certain of himself, so condensed everything was within his grasp. I gave a cold laugh. To destroy a man, one must first let him go mad. The crown prince was dead. He had supposedly gone to suppress bandits, but ended up stabbed to death by them. His body riddled with holes like a human civilian. They said his eyes were wide open even in death, unable to close. The moment the news reached us, Lucas had been flaunting his wealth to me. He froze where he stood, the red coral in his hand slipping and shattering against the ground. What a pity, such a rare treasure, worth quite a fortune. I looked at the scattered fragments with faint regret. How could this be? The one who should have died was. He shook his head in disbelief, grabbing a servant to confirm again and again. Finally hadn't fulfilled he collapsed onto the floor when he snapped back to himself. He stared at me and demanded it was you. You did this hadn't fulfilled brand session. Didn't you? Then he immediately denied the thought, scratching his head in frustration. No, you wouldn't have that ability. He stumbled off toward the Marquis's residence like a soulless shell. He was right about one thing. I didn't have that ability. But the third prince did. My ally, His Majesty's only legitimate son. Beloved and brilliant. As long as he kept his wits. How could the crown prince ever threaten him? Last lifetime. He died on the mission to suppress bandits, allowing the crown prince the chance to rise. But what if the one who died this time was the crown prince? Ever since I discovered Lucas had been reborn, I altered my plan and rebuilt everything from scratch. Lucas's greatest flaw was always his arrogance. Thinking that with memories of his past life, he could bend the world to his will. He knew the future. So did I. The difference was I knew that fate could be changed as long as one acted. While he toiled for the crown prince, I began my own maneuvering. Though my father had retired, half the court still held ties to him. I quietly forged connections, binding them to the third prince. I even passed the third prince a list names of the crown princes and Lucas's people. Many crucial figures were swayed with surprising ease. My father, who appeared to be touring mountains and rivers, was in truth helping the third prince build an army. Long before the so-called bandits' oppression, father had already eliminated the real bandits. Those bandits they encountered were merely the third prince's shadow guards. There had been such an easy road ahead. Yet Lucas insisted on relying on memories of his past life to support the crown prince. Do you want to witness his downfall with your own eyes? The third prince appeared in my room without warning, leaning closer with a smile. I've told you several times don't enter my room so casually. I shot him a glare, sidestepping to keep a safe distance. He was a fine ally, but he enjoyed teasing me far too much. Thank you. I sat down, poured him tea, and offered it respectfully with both hands. He was clever. Never asked about my past with Lucas, nor how I knew all that I knew. If I said it, he believed it. Without him, my revenge would never have succeeded so smoothly. Perhaps my tone was too solemn. His usual carefree expressions offend. He looked at me deeply and said, "No, it is I who should thank you. If not for you, the death announced today would have been mine." He reached to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I dodged and his hand hung in the air a moment before he awkwardly grabbed the teacup and downed it in one gulp. A life saved as a dead engraved in my heart. I lifted my cup as well. Some things needed no words. Guards surrounded the Lucas estate. By imperial decree, Lucas is found guilty of treason and collusion with enemy forces. His crimes are proven. His entire clan is to be executed. The entire Lucas family now trembling. Lucas was dragged out and forced to kneel before me from above. Looking down at him, he really did resemble a dog. He tried to clutch at my ankle, but the third prince narrowed his eyes and kicked him aside, coughing blood. Lucas still struggled toward me, muttering, "Impossible. The traitor should have been." He looked up at me, eyes pleading. "Sophia, I know you hate me, but the others in my family are innocent. Please spare them." Innocent, I remembered well how they treated me. In summer, they made me kneel in the courtyard under the scorching sun. In winter, they made me collect dew for them at dawn. I ate their leftovers, dressed worse than the servants. The day I died, they were all busy currying favor with my half-sister and my William family. Were we not innocent? I ground my heel into his face, pressing again and again. Dust smeared across his once handsome features. "It was Lucas who dragged you all into this." I told his family with a sigh, feigning pity, "He's the one who tried to rebel. You poor, unfortunate souls." As expected, their fury instantly turned toward Lucas. The third prince handed me a handkerchief, gesturing for me to wipe my shoe. Indeed, far too filthy. "Sophia, you can't leave me. You loved me most, didn't you?" Lucas shouted desperately. Where did he find the face to say that? Did he really think I was still the same Sophia from my past life? The one who thought of him even in death? I pretended I hadn't heard, but the third prince wasn't pleased. "Stitch his mouth shut," he ordered angrily, then turned to look at me with a resentful gaze. I was perplexed. What was he angry about? I saw one of the third prince's attendants, who had pulled out a needle and thread from who knows where. Stitching Lucas's mouth closed with remarkable speed and precision. Lucas watched helplessly as his blood dripped steadily down, struggling in agony. With a scream, he could no longer open his mouth. His face was a mangled mess. The rest of Lucas's family dared not lift their heads, trembling in fear. Only his mother, desperate to save her precious son, tried to rush forward, but was forcibly held down. She glared at me with hatred, but the third prince had ordered her eyes to be gouged out. I couldn't help but smile, a carefree chuckle escaping my lips before I turned to leave. On the day of the Lucas family's execution, the sun was shining brightly. It was an unexpectedly beautiful day. I didn't go. Nancy did. She told me that every single member of the Lucas family cursed Lucas until the very end. Truly betrayal from all sides. "I want to show you something," the third prince said, noticing me daydreaming by the window. He spoke in a tone of flattery. This man, he had a habit of barging into my room uninvited in the third prince's dungeon. I found Lucas, battered and bruised, lying on the floor. He glared at me fiercely, but all he could do now was try to say something unfortunately. His mouth was beyond recognition. "TK. What an ugly sight. I thought you might want to handle this yourself, so I brought him to you," the third prince said, his eyes half-lit, looking at me with a seductive gleam. "Do as you wish with him. I'll take care of the aftermath," he said quietly before turning and leaving me alone with Lucas in the dungeon. Lucas, he was a boy already fully formed. He was only a month away from seeing this world. I whispered softly to him, my tone gentle. A hint of guilt appeared on Lucas's face as he tried to make a sound, but all he could manage were muffled groans. I continued inferally. He never saw this world. And honestly, you don't need to see it either. Hearing this, Lucas's eyes widened in terror. Without a second thought, I held a hot iron and pressed it directly onto his eyes. The sizzling sound filled the air, accompanied by the scent of burning flesh. Lucas struggled violently, enduring excruciating pain before finally passing out. I calmly walked to the side, scooping a basin of salt water, and threw it onto him. The intense pain jolted him awake. Lucas, do you know how it feels when the skin tears away? Like strips of flesh being peeled off your body. I held a sharp, gleaming knife and traced at sag near Lucas's legs. The cold touch made him shudder. In his fear, he even wet himself. What a bore. I turned and walked out, leaving without a second glance, sincerely thanking the third prince. Thank you. Behind me, the sound of slicing flesh echoed. In the end, Lucas's lower body was reduced to shreds, leaving only bone. He eventually bled to death, his final breath fading away. The emperor didn't survive the winter. The third prince ascended the throne smoothly. The day before his coronation, he came to me and asked if I would be his empress. I shook my head, refusing outright. I knew he had feelings for me, but people's hearts are fickle, and I didn't want to put the William family at the mercy of another power struggle. Besides, this life, I no longer wished to be entangled with love. I only wanted to serve my grandmother well and protect the William family. He didn't press me further. On the day of his ascension, an imperial decree was issued declaring that I, as a woman, would inherit the William family estate.